to talk to you about the prejudice of love. And on first appearance, those two words don't seem like they should really be put together. But this is kind of where I want to hopefully steer this ship tonight as we talk about the concept of love, the prejudice of love. So we're going to be reading from 1 John. And I think it's important that we understand, whenever we read Scripture, that we understand what it is we're reading, who wrote it, and who it was written to, because that can be very, very important to the ways in which we see the Scripture and we receive the Scripture. And too often, we immediately just start from the place of what does this mean for me personally, and we don't consider why this Scripture was written. So 1 John, as I want to look at, was traditionally credited to John the Evangelist, okay, as are the Gospel of John, the other epistles being 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John, and Revelation. Revelation, it may or may not be the same John, but traditionally it's been established that this was the same John. And scholars right now think that it was most likely written by a disciple of John the Evangelist, or it stemmed from a community that John the Evangelist had established. So why is this important? We know that a group of people, their leader tends to be the indicator of the makeup of that group of people. So a pastor can very much define the spiritual well-being of a church in the same way that a CEO of a company very much defines the way that that company operates. And so for this community that John established, they take on his worldview. They find what's important, the things that John finds important. And so everything that would come out of that, everything that would be a product of this community, would be focused on that. So when we read 1 John, it's very important that we understand what exactly it was that he was establishing within the Gospel of John. The Gospel of John, of course, stands alone from the other three Gospels. We call the first three, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, we call these the synoptic Gospels, which just means they look the same. Synoptic, they look the same. And John's a little bit different. It starts off with this really strange poem about in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word was with God. And then it just kind of drops us into the middle of this story about this Jesus. And we don't understand necessarily where he came from. And so much of what John writes about in the Gospel are conversations that Jesus had, whether it's with the Jewish establishment of the time, or it was with his followers or the people that were coming to hear him speak. But the two main things that John really talks about are these concepts of truth and the concepts of love. And so when we read 1st and 2nd and 3rd John, and then even when we read Revelation, those ideas of truth and love come up time and time and time again. So it's really important that we understand that as we enter into 1 John, so that we can kind of see where he was coming from. So, yes, intricately tied to the Gospel of John. So yeah, this is the way that the letter of 1 John starts. That which was from the beginning, which we have heard, which we have seen with our eyes, which we have looked at, and our hands have touched, this we proclaim concerning the word of life. It still has that kind of poetic narrative that the Gospel of John starts out with. So we start talking about this idea of the Word, and something that comes from the beginning. We've seen it, we've heard it, we've looked at it, we've touched it, and it's this thing. This is what we want to talk to you about. Right? This is what I want to talk to you about. So John immediately starts laying out kind of, this is why, and he's very big picture with it at the beginning. The beautiful thing that I love about this letter, and I've been obsessing with it so much over the past few months, again because it contains so much of what I desperately need to hear, is seeing John's affection for the people that he's writing for. He uses these phrases, dear children, dear fathers, dear young men, dear friends. And so you really get a feeling for the people for which he was writing. There was a connection here. This was not some academic piece of writing that was just mass-produced and sent out. This was for human beings that the writer had a lot of a love and affection for. And it's very important that we are able to see that too, that we allow Scripture to have its humanity built into it, the emotions built into it. When we went through the Gospel of Matthew yesterday, it was just so funny how many times we talked about Jesus was amazed at this, and the crowd was amazed at that, and these guys were amazed at what he said. Jesus had compassion, and it was just, it's written in there, and I think a lot of times we don't really pause and kind of see the life of these people that are writing, and the life of the people that are being written to. So I just want us to kind of keep that in mind as we go on. So what we're going to be talking about tonight, I'm going to be taking a piece from 1 John 3 and a piece from 1 John 4. So if you guys want to